New background! Again, I literally just moved to a different corner and added some pizzazz while waiting for my set decorations, aka the Spider-Man standee and Lil Lucy Hale. I swear that the second that there's a modicum of stability in my life, the videos will follow. Maybe, who knows? It's been like 2 months of this. But today we're talking about Don't Breathe 2. Now, a very common thread in the horror world is unnecessary sequels. People work hard to make really effective horror and thriller movies that then do super well, and then people insist that you make a sequel even if those sequels don't really work well in the confines of the universe that was created or are just bad. But I don't know if I've experienced a sequel more pointless in recent memory than Don't Breathe 2, at least in the way that they approach it. Oh my god, I forgot about Space Jam. The premise for Don't Breathe 2 is taking someone who is so beyond screwed up and trying to turn them into some form of anti-hero. I've talked about something a little adjacent to this in my video about the show You, where I felt that they took the character from the book and gave him redeeming qualities where he's trying to protect kids in both seasons, so he gets a little bit of this Dexter vibe. Instead of being this trope amalgamation of horrible behavior that he's supposed to be, where he becomes obsessively fixated on whatever girl currently has his attention. And then they went and made him like the champion for little kids. Some characters just don't need to be redeemed to any capacity or seen as anti-heroes. And even more than that, some characters should just not be redeemed to any capacity. And that's how I feel about Norman Nordstrom, or the old guy from Don't Breathe. So even entering that area didn't work plot-wise for me. So if you're looking for something better to watch, today's returning sponsor likewise has you covered as the best place to discover new media. Maybe you're bad at picking movies and shows across all these different streaming services, or maybe you just want something similar to what you just finished and don't know where to start. With likewise, whether you're looking for movies, TV shows, books, or even podcasts, they'll use all the subjects, themes, and specific titles that you're interested in to recommend you new media based on smart technology and real user recommendations. I always seem to have something to watch, but I'm terrible at keeping up with shows, and there's still movies that manage to slip under my radar. And likewise always seems to have me covered with those fresh recommendations. I'm also terrible at picking out new books, which likewise has been great for. I just picked up Clara and the Sun based on a likewise recommendation, and it's been great so far. The only issue is that I end up with so many great recommendations that I then need to decide what to watch and read based on those recommendations. And the recommendations definitely work. Like, I obviously couldn't list every movie or television show I've ever seen, so anytime it recommended me something that I already had seen, it was something that I liked. Every day you get a personalized list that you can swipe through, and if you come across something that seems interesting, it's super easy to save it for later so you never have to keep track of what you're being shown. And it'll even let you know what streaming service it's available on. You can also make lists of all your favorites or things that you'd recommend in specific genres to share with other users. For example, I'll have the list of things I've watched in August listed down below. And if you're really just feeling a binge day, you can use the Ask feature to request recommendations from the community. So not only can you get amazing suggestions, you can share some of your favorites with the community as a whole. So if you want some sweet recommendations from Likewise and to help support the channel, you can head on over to on.likewise.com/Jedi2 by clicking the link in the description down below. It's 100% free, and you can follow me there at Amanda the Jedi. Now, I found Don't Breathe to be a very effective horror movie. You start with a group of teens breaking into a home, and then it turns into a real I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me moment. They thought they were dealing with this frail ex-military guy who can't see. But the true nature of the horror is so much worse than this guy just being like a super effective killer, and it is so much more than anybody could have imagined when going into that movie. And Don't Breathe 2 is just not anything like it at all. So for those who need a refresher on the first Don't Breathe so you understand where I'm coming from, some delinquent teens are trying to make money to get out of bad home situations, break into a house of a blind man because they get word that he has $300,000 in cash stored somewhere inside the house. But they quickly realize that this guy isn't the easy target they assumed when he kills one of their friends pretty quickly. And then starts hunting the other two down viciously when he realizes that the first guy wasn't alone. So you start off with people that are definitely doing a wrong. So to some capacity, you're like, okay, they fucked around and now they're finding out. I don't want them to die, so just get out of the house as clean as possible. But as they're being hunted through this home that their target turned attacker is intimately familiar with, they come across the real horror. A young girl named Cindy trapped in a cage pregnant. Because this sick fuck has kidnapped a girl to be an incubator to birth a replacement for the daughter that he lost. Frick it, we're rooting for the home invader. Kill that sick fuck and get out with all the money. Then it only gets worse, dear friends. You see, when trying to kill them, he accidentally kills his incubator, Cindy, so he takes Rocky as a replacement. But don't worry, he's not like a complete monster. He's not gonna force himself on her sexually, pardon my dancing around the term for the sake of YouTube. He's just gonna turkey baste her.
There's nothing a man cannot do once he accepts the fact that there is no God.
No. No. I think they're both just as bad and equally as violating, you sick Jesus, we're not even covering that movie and I'm already getting worked up. I really can't express to you how it felt to be in a theater when that reveal happened. But effective horror, it's horrific. In my wildest nightmares, I couldn't have come up with that plot line. It took what would have already been an interesting flipped cat and mouse game, where you're semi-rooting for this brutal old man defending his home while still sympathizing for these likable characters trying to get out of a bad situation, and just made it the most twisted horror house these kids could have wandered into. Don't worry though, pals, he's gonna let her go after she gives birth. It's not like she's gonna go to the cops or anything, and it's like only a total bodily violation. And 9 months of your life gone. Horrifying, excellent addition to the horror villain catalog. But she manages to escape with the money, which is why she doesn't tell the cops anything about what happened, and starts making her way to California with her younger sister, where she sees the news report that Norman is in the hospital recovering after killing 2 home invaders, with no mention of the missing money, Rocky, or Cindy. How the cops didn't find Cindy's body is beyond me, I don't know. But whatever, that's how it ends. With a potential looming threat that this guy is still out there, waiting to baste. I'm sorry. So what would you think the logical continuation for a sequel would be? For one, I probably would have had this come out a long time ago, but there's a lot of options. Something happens that she has to go back to Detroit, and that's how he ends up finding her again. Cops realize that he was the one who captured Cindy, and it turns into some kind of like detective story, horror on that side. He succeeds in his plans, and the kid slowly starts unraveling the truth of her life. There's actually a lot of ways this could have been effectively and creatively continued. They could have even use the story that they set up in the sequel that they did make, but better, which I'll get into once we enter the spoiler town of things. But no, the direction they take is so much worse and stupid. Like, the director and the co-writer both said that there was more to the movie than what the trailer suggested, but no, not really. And they can say that they're not working to redeem this guy all they want, and they intended for everybody to come across as bad guys, which in a way they do, but they also want him to acknowledge the monster that he is. And the second you do that with a character, you are looking for some kind of redemption, even if it is in the form of an anti-hero or anti-villain as they're calling him. I feel like he falls somewhere in between the two and just doesn't really work as either. We are supposed to sympathize with him in some way. Yes, you get to watch an old guy fuck up really shitty people, but he is also really shitty people. So let's start with some no spoiler thoughts. Audiences actually seem to be really enjoying this for whatever reason. I realize this is Rotten Tomatoes and things can just scale that way, but my showing didn't really seem that entertained, and there was like barely anybody there. But there was even like a group of like young kids who are usually the ones who let themselves get really worked up over horror movies, and there was just like nothing. Because it was rated 14A in Canada, by the way, so it didn't even get an R rating. But it just didn't strike me as something that people would find super interesting. But I guess if you're just in it to watch some brutal kills and get some cool shots, it'll probably deliver. But keep in mind that I'm someone who's typically very forgiving of movies that have like fun, over-the-top stylized violence, even if the story ends up being a little weak, because I can have a good time with it. And I'm still giving this like, I think I gave it a 2 out of 5. Like, this movie just felt so bland in some ways and just laughable in others. Because even if you ignore the weird semi-redemption anti-hero angle that they took, I didn't find it to be a very effective horror or thriller. In fact, this feels way more like an action movie, but you're in the confines of a horror universe, so it doesn't get to that like grandiose level that you might expect of an action either, which makes it lose so much of the charm that the original established. I just think there's so many better ways they could have gone, because their work to try to make other people seem worse than the turkey baster molester is just bold and not necessarily effective. He's still just this lumbering monster who I'd love to see killed by a character that I have more empathy for, like Rocky. If for some reason you're genuinely interested in this movie, I would just avoid all the trailers if you have so far. I didn't watch a single one, and I just knew what the base idea of the movie was because people were talking about it online so much. But watching the trailer after the fact lets you know they do give away quite a bit. So general premise is that he now has his replacement daughter, and they are once again dealing with a home invasion situation where he has to protect this young girl. And that's really it. There's some really nice camera work moments as they're weaving through the house while the girl is trying to evade the intruders. Some really well-designed shots in terms of colors and aesthetics, like the light coming through the windows of a dark room covered in smoke. But then it just throws in some shit CGI at times that even I, a lowly internet idiot, could immediately pick a better way to design out a scene. So let's dive into the movie and how they set him up to be a flawed anti-hero that we're to some capacity supposed to be rooting for, all while acknowledging that everyone's the bad guy. And I'll be going into spoilers, so if for some reason you want to watch this, just like jump off now and come back later and we'll have a chat. It's a one-sided conversation, but it's fine. So it starts with this really really bad and quite unnecessary CGI. I can't show it to you, but it like pans overhead of a house burning and this like young girl wandering out and then collapsing. But even the girl is CGI in this scene because it looks so clunky, like a video game would look smoother than this. Then immediately just cuts to the real girl on the ground before quickly cutting to 8 years later. The easy way to solve this would have been having the camera facing a girl walking on like a blue or green screen towards the camera and collapsing, and then just putting in the burning house behind her. That would have looked significantly better and more real and would have been a better designed shot than what we got. Or do the whole like track the feet stumbling while you can like hear the crackling flames in the background and then cut to her on the ground with the flames behind her. I don't know, there's so many better ways to do this. But I also just don't think they should have bothered showing us that at all. Just show us him years later with the daughter and leave us wondering, oh god, did he succeed in his turkey baster plans? Either way, it cuts to 8 years later with the same young girl that he clearly nabbed and named Phoenix for obvious reasons, and is obviously going through some hit girl style training. He doesn't let her go to school, doesn't want her in public, occasionally lets this lady take her into town when she does errands for him, but for the most part he wants to keep her entirely to himself. But she's lonely, which is where the trouble starts. So he doesn't want her to go into town this particular day, but eventually lets up and lets her go to town with Hernandez. Even though there are news reports of people being kidnapped and organ harvested, still not worse than turkey basting. For some reason, I was expecting this to be a brutal horror thriller, but what we got is like an action movie that sometimes morphs into a semi-heartwarming drama, or like over-the-top heartwarming drama. Like she's sitting in a park wanting to hang out with these kids at a shelter, but can't bring herself to just go say hi to them. So then she starts wishing that she lived at the shelter. Holy shit. Congratulations, you've created a home life so stifling that you would rather be an orphan. But then this creepo is stalking her outside the bathroom until Shadow's there threatening to bite off his nuts. And they make it really obvious that these are apparently the organ harvesters when they show a single little cooler in the back of their truck. Not wasting any brain cells here today, pals. But they follow them back, kill Hernandez when she's trying to make it back into town. She was also ex-military, by the way, and all of these guys are also ex-military. Everybody's just ex-military. But these ones were specifically dishonorably discharged. So that's how you know they're trouble. Still don't know why they killed her. Like at first I thought they wanted to harvest her organs and then they were gonna go like get the kid for like the same purpose. But when you're gonna harvest someone's organs, I don't think you bash their face in and kill them first. And then they just leave her there. So they killed her for like no real reason. Unless for some reason they thought she was involved in something, which we'll get to later. So they get to the house and this is where the standard home invasion story starts. Warning, Shadow is going to die. So prepare yourself for that. It's not particularly graphic, but I had read something where the dog doesn't die. So I felt very bamboozled and upset when it happened because it's a different dog that doesn't die. Again, a lot of really interesting camera work here as it's like weaving through the house and down the stairs and around all the people. Definitely kept things interesting to watch, and this was probably the most effective moment of tension in the movie. She's trying to avoid getting caught while Norman is wandering outside trying to find Shadow. Then they realize he's blind. But then he realizes that somebody purposely killed Shadow and wanders back to the house for some Jason Voorhees-esque through the window grabs. So this is where our anti-hero track starts. We know that he had to have kidnapped her from the burning house, which is only marginally better than the turkey baster baby maker plans. But theoretically, her parents are still out there. But now he has to protect her from this onslaught of very dedicated men trying to kidnap her. So I'm thinking, are they organ harvesters and the ringleader is a pedo that just took a liking to her? Because that's like the big way to make them worse than Norman. But no. Oh no, just wait. This is where we get some stupid funny action stuff where he basically like blows some dude up in a contained basement explosion. Then just some really fun badass stuff like super gluing this guy's nose and mouth shut. A very effective torture murder tactic. I love it. But the whole time I'm wondering, why this kid? Who is connected to this kid? Why are they making such a fuss when the cops could have been called at any moment? Well, turns out that the ringleader dude, Raylan, is her father. See, that house fire from the beginning was actually the result of an exploding meth lab, and he's just been in jail the rest of the time. And they prove this to us, the audience, by him revealing the tuft of white hair that grows out of the side of his head that matches hers. I don't know, I think this would have been a better reveal if we didn't know she had actually been rescued from a house fire and we were just kind of wondering whether or not she was the product of like the Baster attack. But she's a bit shell-shocked. Norman always told her that he was her dad and that her mom died in a house fire when she was a baby. And that's how Raylan found her. When she went out with Hernandez, she stopped at the mostly burned down house to leave flowers for her mom because it's essentially like the grave marker, I guess, and she heard someone else inside. And who she heard was Raylan, who then just followed her around. They do manage to finally grab her after trapping Norman upstairs with a dog. Who doesn't die? This is the one that makes it through. But Raylan Dad decides to burn the whole place down, dog and all. But then Norman saves the dog and they both get out. He may be a turkey baster molester, but he's not a monster animal killer. Look, I can excuse myself turkey basting a lady, but I draw the line at killing a dog that's trying to kill me. Yeah, dude, nah, you're still messed up, bro. So he realizes that if he tells the dog to go home and puts a bell on him and a makeshift leash, he can follow him right back to wherever they've been hiding out, which is where they've taken Phoenix, whose birth name is Tara. Raylan tells him about her mom, how he went to jail, and that's when old creeper nabbed her, but she can leave at any time because she's not a prisoner now. So she's off to the shelter until her mom wheels out. Apparently not dead, just sick and near death from, well, the fumes of exploded meth. So at this point, these people clearly suck. But the reason why they wanted to find their daughter wasn't to have a loving family reunion. It's because the mom needed an exact heart donor bloodline match. They literally tracked this girl down just to murder her. Still probably only on par with the turkey baster thing, but they are really pushing hard to make him seem better by comparison. But I'd rather be dead than turkey baster impregnated and locked in a cage, like literally. I laughed so hard when they made that reveal, like what a bold plan, holy shit. And most of the guys are like okay with the child murder because the mom is a cook and apparently like criminals just can't, you know, find another meth cook. But just as they're about to cut into her, Norman makes it back for new bloodshed. He cuts the power and uses his super touch abilities to know when to shoot people by pretending to be dead in the water. Feeling like Daredevil over here, guys. Like, come on, he even has super smell. But honestly, after this dude laid out a bunch of their men, they absolutely would have shot him on sight. None of this wandering towards him in the water, just pop off a couple shots and be on their way. But I get it, you can't do the super fun touch powers otherwise. One nice thing about this, though, even though he keeps going on this like Jason Voorhees style murder spree, you do feel his age in the fights. He just always comes back to deal the killing blows. This is also where we get the third of our redeeming or semi-redeeming characters. One of Raylan's men is not at all on board with this whole killing a child plan, so he tells Norman exactly where they're gonna go. The other two redeeming characters being Hernandez, who is dead, and the literal child. So he goes up, kills the doctor, pops off a bunch of gas poison cans so they can't see, and goes to work. And this scene looks super cool with the lighting. And much like in the first one where Norman accidentally shoots Cindy, Raylan accidentally shoots the mom, who then starts electric wheelchairing herself over the side into the empty pool with Phoenix handcuffed to her, who then has to machete her arm off. Like the dead mom's not hers, but still. Good job, we're saving this kid just to traumatize her in about 15 different ways. But Norman lays out Raylan and tells Phoenix that everything he said was true. He kidnapped her as a child and that she needs to leave him because he's a bad man. No word on where to go, like imagine she didn't have this pamphlet for the shelter. But no, I will not be feeling sympathy for this sick fuck. You were potentially a marginally better parent than literal drug dealer and addicts. But a rare best case scenario for this would be the child ending up in an adoption agency. Like at least the drug addicts probably would have sent her to school to get her out of the way. Like we're not falling in for this troubled man realizes the error of his way card when he had some poor girl chained after forced impregnation. But then Raylan pops back up and stabs him in the back. And then Phoenix stabs him through the heart until he stumbles over the pool edge and drops dead next to his wife. So if she wasn't traumatized from the whole hacking another arm off to save herself thing, she definitely is now. She's obviously upset that Norman is dying. Like up until this point, she's seen him as her actual father. He was way overprotective and essentially locked her up, but hey, at least she wasn't the product of some kind of turkey baster and he didn't try to cut her heart out while she was alive and awake. It's a low bar to pass, but it's there. So he dies, the semi-redeemed anti-hero, except not at all. You turkey-based kidnapped some poor girl and then tried to do it again, you sick f***. So he dies and she heads off to Covenant Shelter to hang out with all the other kids and have a nice little Disney-like conclusion with a Rey Skywalker name moment where when they ask her what her name is, she doesn't say Tara, she says Phoenix. The end! Holy shit, that was not great. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think him dying is paying for his actions as the creative team suggests, especially not when he's dying at the hands of someone like this. There was some really nice action moment and some really solid shots, but it's wrapped around a story that is so stupid and pointless that if I wasn't making this video, I would have forgotten forgotten about it already. So in my opinion, the better way to do this particular story that they set up would be to have her parents not try to murder her. You can have them be rough and criminal, but then have Norman see himself as a better alternative to these drug dealers, which is why he grabbed her. So that he's actually fighting her rightful family to keep her away from them, and they're just trying to save her. Or have him succeed at his messed up Baster plan, and have the bio mom he kidnapped come back with other people to mess him up and leave the kid in this conflicted in-between. I don't know, lots of ways to make this work better than what we got and have it like thematically line up in some ways with how the other one felt. Because this just ultimately feels pointless and wasn't enjoyable enough to justify that. Like, I've watched things that feel pointless, but they're enjoyable enough that I'm like, you know what, like, what is the point of anything? Like, it's messed up for the kid regardless, her whole life is a lie. But trying to make these people seem worse to make an anti-hero story out of Norman just doesn't mesh well with me. And it removes what made the original so special and just makes this another stupid, pointless sequel to add to the legion of other stupid, pointless sequels. There's nothing scary about this, there were minimal moments of tension, and it's working to create some kind of redemption arc for one of the most sinister and vile movie villains that had been introduced in modern horror. Someone who's doing something so depraved and horrific that anybody with a conscious thought would be disgusted. But he doesn't see himself as completely evil because he didn't like physically do the thing and was gonna let her go after it was done. It's something that only the most twisted minds could commit to, and the sequel just doesn't stack up to that. There were definitely moments where I was rooting for him because everyone sucks, and if he's protecting the girl, that's the side I'm gonna be in, but I just wish we had gotten anything else. Let Norman be the stuff of nightmares, the kind of villain where you'd stop and say, hey, I would rather take my chances with Ghostface, Jason Voorhees, hell, the Thing from The Following. Maybe not that last one. You can keep the other morally ambiguous or flat out bad characters, but keep him as this deeply twisted man trying to justify his horrific actions for his own personal desires to replace his dead daughter. Again, we just don't need the Norman redemption arc. So that is gonna do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters, with a special thank you to Son of Loki 3011 for becoming my most recent Jedi Knight level patron. Thanks again to Likewise for sponsoring the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.